I caught my wife with my brother, and it was the worst thing I've ever experienced. What I walked in on at my brother's apartment last Tuesday destroyed not just my marriage, but my entire family in one devastating moment. I'm writing this at 3 a.m. because I can't sleep, can't eat, and honestly can't believe this is my life now. 3 weeks ago, I thought I knew who I was: loving husband, devoted brother, the guy who always tried to see the best in people. Now I don't know anything anymore, except that betrayal cuts deeper when it comes from the two people you trust with your life. My name is Marcus. I'm 31, and I've been married to Kelly for 6 years. We met in grad school, did the whole responsible adult thing, saved up for a house, built careers, talked about kids. She's a pediatric nurse. I'm an engineer, and we were that couple who actually seemed to have her shit together while everyone else was still figuring things out. My brother Tyler is 2 years younger than me, and we've always been close. Growing up, I was the responsible older brother who kept him out of trouble, and he was the charming younger one who could talk his way out of anything. He's a personal trainer, lives in a nice apartment downtown, and has always been the family favorite, the one with the easy smile and the ability to make anyone feel like the most important person in the room. Kelly and Tyler got along great from the moment I introduced them. Maybe too great, but I was just happy that my wife and my brother liked each other. Family harmony, right? I thought it was a blessing that they could hang out without me feeling like I was caught in the middle of awkward tension. God, I was naive. The discovery happened in the most mundane way possible, which somehow makes it even more devastating. No dramatic confrontation, no suspicious behavior that led to investigation. Just pure, stupid, life-destroying coincidence. I've been working on a big project at work, pulling long hours, and basically living on coffee and stress for the past month. Kelly had been understanding about it, even encouraging me to do whatever I needed to do to get through it. She'd been picking up extra shifts at the hospital, saying the overtime pay would be nice for our vacation fund. Tyler had been around more than usual during this period, which I thought was sweet. He'd stop by the house to check on Kelly when I was working late, sometimes bringing takeout or just hanging out so she wouldn't be alone. A few times I'd come home to find him watching movies on the couch, and I'd feel this warm, fuzzy feeling about how well my family got along. Last Tuesday, I finished my project presentation early, like really early. Instead of the all-nighter I'd been expecting, I wrapped up around 2 p.m. and decided to surprise Kelly by taking her out for a nice dinner. We hadn't had a proper date in weeks, and I was feeling guilty about neglecting her during my work crunch. I called her phone to suggest dinner plans, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried texting but got no response, which was weird because Kelly's usually glued to her phone during her days off. I figured maybe she was at the gym or grocery shopping with her phone on silent. Then I remembered that Tyler had mentioned wanting to show me some new equipment he'd gotten for his home gym. I thought maybe Kelly was over there. She'd been talking about wanting to get back into working out, and Tyler had offered to help her set up a routine. So I drove to Tyler's apartment, planning to surprise them both and maybe grab an early dinner together. As a family, I had my spare key to his place because we'd always been the type of brothers who looked out for each other's stuff when the other was out of town. I let myself in, calling out that I was there, but got no answer. Tyler's apartment has this open floor plan where you could see most of the living space from the front door, and it looked empty. I figured maybe they'd stepped out, but then I heard sounds coming from his bedroom. At first, I thought maybe Tyler was watching TV or listening to music. But as I got closer to investigate, the sound became unmistakable, and one of the voices was definitely female. My brain went through this weird process of elimination. Maybe Tyler had a girl over, and Kelly had left already. Maybe Kelly was in the bathroom while Tyler was entertaining someone. Maybe I was hearing things entirely, and my work stress was making me paranoid. But deep down, in that place where you know things before your conscious mind catches up, I knew exactly what I was about to find. I stood outside Tyler's bedroom door for probably 30 seconds, listening to sounds that confirmed my worst fear, while my mind desperately tried to come up with alternative explanations. The female voice moaning my brother's name was definitely Kelly's. The male voice whispering things I'd never heard him say was definitely Tyler's. And the realization that my wife and my brother were having sex in the next room made me feel like I was going to throw up, pass out, and have a heart attack all at the same time. I could have left. I could have backed out quietly, pretended I'd never been there, and confronted them later when I'd had time to process what was happening. But something in me needed to see it with my own eyes, needed the visual confirmation that would make denial impossible. So I opened the door. What I saw will be burned in my memory for the rest of my life. Kelly was on top of Tyler, both of them, completely naked and completely absorbed in each other. The afternoon sunlight was streaming through his bedroom window, illuminating everything in this horrible, clear detail that made it impossible to pretend this was some kind of nightmare. But it wasn't just the physical betrayal that destroyed me in that moment. It was the intimacy, the way they were looking at each other, touching each other, the obvious comfort and familiarity between them. This wasn't some drunken mistake or moment of weakness. This was a relationship. They didn't notice me at first, which gave me about 10 seconds to watch my wife and my brother together in a way that made it clear this had been going on for a while. Kelly was wearing lingerie I'd never seen before, expensive-looking stuff that definitely wasn't from her usual Target runs. Tyler was being gentle and attentive in ways that showed this wasn't their first time together. When Kelly finally opened her eyes and saw me standing in the doorway, the look on her face wasn't surprise or guilt. It was fear, not of being caught, but of having to deal with the consequences of something she'd been planning to handle differently. Tyler's reaction was even worse. When he saw me, there was this split second where he looked almost relieved, like he was tired of sneaking around and ready to get everything out in the open. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I just stood there for maybe 15 seconds while they scrambled to cover themselves and start the frantic process of trying to explain the unexplainable. Then I turned around and walked out. I sat in my car in Tyler's parking lot for over an hour, staring at the building and trying to process what I'd just witnessed. My phone was buzzing constantly. Texts from Kelly, calls from Tyler, messages that I couldn't bring myself to read or answer. The worst part was that I could see their relationship so clearly now that I knew what to look for. All those times Tyler had been checking on Kelly when I was working late. All those inside jokes they developed that I didn't understand. The way Kelly had been more interested in looking good lately, buying new clothes and lingerie that she claimed was just for herself. Even worse were the memories that now felt contaminated. The family barbecue, where I joked about Kelly and Tyler ganging up on me during a game of cards. The time Kelly had insisted we spend Christmas at Tyler's place instead of hosting at our house. The weekend when I'd been sick with the flu, and Tyler had come over to help Kelly take care of me while I slept for 2 days straight. How long had they been lying to my face? How many times had I thanked Tyler for being such a good brother and Kelly for being such an understanding wife while they were carrying on behind my back? I finally drove home around 6 p.m., hoping Kelly would be there so we could have the conversation that was going to end our marriage. But the house was empty except for a note on the kitchen counter, explaining that she was staying at her sister's and would call me when she was ready to talk. She was ready to talk. Like this was some minor disagreement we needed to work through instead of the complete destruction of our marriage and my relationship with my brother. I spent that night going through our house like a detective, looking for evidence of how long this had been going on. I found receipts for the expensive lingerie hidden in her jewelry box. I found a second phone charger in her car, one that didn't fit her phone but did fit Tyler's. I found a Valentine's Day card in her dresser drawer that I hadn't written, signed with Tyler's initial. The timeline that emerged was devastating. Based on the evidence I could piece together, they'd been having an affair for at least 8 months. 8 months of elaborate deception, of family dinners where they'd sit across from each other and pretend to be nothing more than in-laws who got along well. 8 months of me feeling grateful that my wife and brother cared about each other while they were planning God knows what behind my back. But the evidence gathering was nothing compared to the phone call I got from Tyler the next morning. He wanted to explain, not apologize, explain, like there was some rational justification for what I'd walked in on that would make me understand why betraying me was actually the right thing to do. According to Tyler, he and Kelly had fallen in love and had been trying to figure out how to handle the situation without hurting me. They'd been planning to tell me eventually, but they wanted to wait until my work project was finished, so I wouldn't be dealing with personal drama during a stressful time. How considerate of them. Tyler also wanted me to know that what they had was real and that they hoped, eventually, I'd be able to understand and maybe even support their relationship. He said Kelly had never been as happy as she'd been these past few months and that he'd never felt about anyone the way he felt about her. The audacity was breathtaking. He was asking me to be happy for them, for my wife and my brother, who had been having an affair for 8 months and we're now planning to build a life together on the ruins of my marriage. Kelly's version of events, which she delivered during a 3-hour conversation at a coffee shop the following weekend, was even more insulting. She claimed that she and I had grown apart and that her relationship with Tyler had shown her what real love was supposed to feel like. She talked about how guilty she'd felt about falling for Tyler, but how she couldn't deny her feelings anymore. She said she'd been planning to ask for a divorce anyway, and that meeting Tyler had just helped her realize what she was missing in our marriage. This was news to me, since I'd thought our marriage was solid. We'd had the usual ups and downs, the normal stresses of work and bills and daily life, but I'd never felt like we were in crisis. Apparently, Kelly had been mentally checking out for months while I was obliviously going about my life thinking everything was fine. The most crushing part was when she told me that she and Tyler were planning to move in together. Not someday, not eventually. They'd already been looking at apartments and had put down a deposit on a place across town. They'd been planning their future together while I was working overtime to save money for a vacation. That was never going to happen. The legal process of divorce was surprisingly quick and straightforward, probably because Kelly was eager to move on to her new life and didn't want to drag things out. We'd been smart about keeping our finances separate and didn't have kids, so it was mostly just dividing up household stuff and figuring out what to do with the house. I kept the house, mainly because Kelly didn't want the memories and I was too emotionally destroyed to deal with moving somewhere new. She took her clothes, her car, and about half of our wedding gifts. Everything else she left behind, like she was erasing 6 years of marriage as efficiently as possible. The hardest part wasn't losing Kelly. As devastating as that was, I could understand that sometimes people fall out of love and marriages end. The hardest part was losing Tyler. My brother had been my best friend, my confidant, the person I called when I needed advice or wanted to celebrate good news. We talked on the phone at least twice a week for my entire adult life. We'd vacationed together, spent holidays together, been each other's emergency contacts on every form we'd ever filled out, and he'd thrown all of that away to sleep with my wife. The family fallout was nuclear. My parents were devastated, not just by the affair, but by how it had torn their sons apart. They tried to stay neutral at first, but it's hard to be neutral when one son has betrayed the other in such a fundamental way. My mom kept calling, trying to get me to work things out with Tyler like this was some minor disagreement between siblings instead of the destruction of my marriage and my ability to trust the people closest to me. She kept saying that family was the most important thing, and that Tyler was still my brother no matter what had happened. But here's what she didn't understand. Tyler had stopped being my brother the moment he decided that wanting Kelly was more important than not destroying me. The person who had been my brother for 29 years wouldn't have done what Tyler did. So either Tyler had never been who I thought he was, or he'd changed into someone I didn't recognize. Either way, the brother I'd loved and trusted was gone. The extended family drama was its own special kind of hell. Cousins choosing sides, aunts and uncles awkwardly avoiding the subject at family gatherings, everyone walking on eggshells around me like I was some kind of victim who might break down at any moment, which, to be fair, I probably was. I lost about 15 pounds in the first month after catching them together, mainly because food tasted like cardboard and I kept forgetting to eat. I'd start to call Tyler when something interesting happened at work, then remember that he wasn't my brother anymore. I'd come home expecting to tell Kelly about my day, then remember that she was living with Tyler now. The loneliness was crushing, but it wasn't just the absence of Kelly and Tyler. It was the absence of the version of myself who had trusted people completely, who had believed that the people who loved me would never deliberately hurt me. That version of Marcus was gone forever, and I was still figuring out who I was supposed to be without him. But here's where the story takes a turn that I never could have predicted, and honestly, if someone had told me this would happen, I would have thought they were crazy. About 2 months after the divorce was finalized, I got a call from Kelly. She was crying, which was unusual because Kelly rarely cried and never called me when she was upset. She said she needed to talk to me about something important, something that couldn't wait. My first thought was that maybe she was having second thoughts about Tyler, that maybe the reality of their relationship wasn't living up to the fantasy they'd built during their affair. Part of me, the part that was still devastated and lonely, hoped that maybe she wanted to try to work things out. But what Kelly actually wanted to tell me was so much worse than anything I could have imagined. She was pregnant. Not just pregnant, but about 12 weeks pregnant, which meant the baby had been conceived while We were still married, and she was still sneaking around with Tyler. Kelly wanted me to know because there was a chance, a small chance, but a chance, that the baby might be mine instead of Tyler's. The timeline was complicated. Kelly and I had still been having sex occasionally, even during her affair. With Tyler, though, I now realized those encounters had probably been motivated more by guilt and maintaining appearances than by actual desire. She'd been with both of us during the time period when the baby was conceived. She wanted to do a paternity test, but not until after the baby was born because of the risks involved with prenatal testing, which meant I was going to spend the next 6 months not knowing whether my ex-wife was carrying my child or my brother's child. The irony was devastating. Kelly and I had been trying to have kids for the last 2 years of our marriage, going to fertility specialists and timing everything perfectly and getting disappointed month after month. It didn't happen. Now she was pregnant, possibly with my baby, by a man who had destroyed our marriage. Tyler's reaction to the pregnancy news was apparently complicated. He was excited about the possibility of being a father, but also terrified that the baby might be mine and that he'd have to deal with me being in their lives permanently. Meanwhile, I was dealing with emotions I didn't even know existed. Hope that maybe I'd finally get to be a father, even under these horrible circumstances. Terror that I might have to co-parent with my ex-wife and my brother for the next 18 years. Rage that the baby I'd wanted so desperately might exist because of the affair that had destroyed my life. The pregnancy also complicated the family dynamics in ways none of us had anticipated. My parents were thrilled about the possibility of grandchild, but horrified by the circumstances. Kelly's family was supportive of her, but uncomfortable with the paternity uncertainty. Everyone was walking on eggshells, trying to figure out how to handle family gatherings and baby preparations when nobody knew whose baby it actually was. I made the decision to stay involved, regardless of paternity. If the baby was mine, obviously I wanted to be a father. But even if the baby was Tyler's, I realized I couldn't just disappear from the situation entirely. This was going to be my niece or nephew, and despite everything that had happened, I couldn't bring myself to abandon a child who would be part of my family either way. The next 6 months were surreal. I went to some of Kelly's doctor appointments, not as her partner, but as someone who might be the father of her child. Tyler was usually there too, creating this bizarre dynamic, where the three of us would sit in waiting rooms together, making awkward small talk about baby names and nursery themes. Kelly and Tyler's relationship was clearly strained by the pregnancy uncertainty. The fantasy they'd built during their affair was crashing into the reality of potential co-parenting with the brother Tyler had betrayed. They'd moved in together, but according to my mom, who was getting updates from Kelly's mom, they were fighting constantly about how to handle the situation. The affair that had seemed so romantic and destiny-driven when it was secret and forbidden was turning out to be much more complicated when it became their actual life. I started going to therapy during this period, mainly because I was struggling to process the layers of betrayal, loss, and now confused hope about potential fatherhood. My therapist helped me understand that I was grieving multiple losses simultaneously: my marriage, my relationship with my brother, my sense of identity, and my ability to trust my own judgment about people. But she also helped me see that I was stronger than I'd given myself credit for. The fact that I was staying involved in the pregnancy situation, despite how painful it was, showed that I was capable of putting a child's well-being ahead of my own hurt feelings. The baby was born on a Tuesday in March, healthy and perfect and absolutely beautiful. I was in the waiting room when it happened, along with both sets of grandparents and Kelly's sister. Tyler was in the delivery room with Kelly, which was appropriate since they were together, but it stung to know that he was experiencing moments that should have been mine if our lives had gone differently. The paternity test was done immediately after birth, and we got the results 3 days later. The baby was mine. I've never experienced such a complex mix of emotions. Joy that I was finally a father, devastation that my daughter was born into such a complicated situation, anger that Tyler had been there for her birth when he wasn't even her biological father, and overwhelming love for this tiny person who was completely innocent in all of our adult drama. Kelly named her Emma, and she was perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, and my eyes. There was no question. She was mine even before the test results came back. But being Emma's father meant navigating a co-parenting relationship with Kelly while she was living with Tyler, which was exactly as awkward and painful as it sounds. I had to drop off diapers and pick up my daughter from the apartment where my ex-wife lived with my brother. Tyler, to his credit, tried to step back and give Kelly and me space to figure out our parenting dynamic. But he was living in the same apartment, and Kelly was emotionally dependent on him, so he was inevitably part of Emma's daily life, whether I was comfortable with it or not. The first few months of Emma's life were a constant negotiation of boundaries and logistics. When could I have her overnight? How involved should Tyler be in her care? What would we tell her about her family situation when she was old enough to ask questions? But gradually, something unexpected started to happen. Taking care of Emma, watching her grow and develop, started to heal something in me that I didn't even realize was broken. Being her father gave me a purpose and identity that was separate from being the guy whose wife cheated with his brother. Emma didn't care about adult drama or family dysfunction. She just needed someone to love her unconditionally and take care of her needs. Being that person for her was the most rewarding thing I'd ever done. Kelly and I developed a functional co-parenting relationship, helped by the fact that we both loved Emma more than we hated each other. We figured out custody schedules and shared expenses and made decisions about daycare and pediatricians like the responsible adults we'd always been, just in a very different context than we'd imagined. Tyler remained a complicating factor, but even that relationship started to shift as the months passed. He was good with Emma, and seeing him be gentle and caring with my daughter reminded me of the brother I'd loved before everything went wrong. I'm not saying I forgave him. The betrayal was too fundamental for that. But I started to understand that holding on to my anger was hurting me more than it was hurting him, and it was definitely not helping Emma to grow up in an environment filled with family tension. Now Emma is almost 2 years old, and she's the light of my life. She spends half her time with me and half with Kelly and Tyler, which isn't the family structure I'd planned, but works better than I'd expected. Kelly and Tyler got married last year in a small ceremony that I obviously didn't attend, but I was okay with it. They seemed genuinely happy together, and more importantly, they're good parents to Emma. Tyler has embraced being her stepfather in ways that show he's grown up a lot since the affair. I've started dating again, something I never thought I'd be ready to do. I met Sarah through a single parents group, and she understands the complexities of co-parenting and blended families in ways that someone without kids might not. Sarah has met Emma, and they get along wonderfully. Emma calls her Sarah and seems to understand that she's someone special to Daddy without being confused about who her actual parents are. My relationship with my parents has healed, mostly because they're so thrilled to be grandparents that they've decided family drama is less important than spending time with Emma. We have family dinners now, where Tyler and Kelly are also present, which would have seemed impossible 2 years ago, but feels normal now. I won't pretend it's not still awkward sometimes. There are moments when I watch Tyler interact with my daughter and remember that he's the person who destroyed my marriage. There are times when I see Kelly being affectionate with Tyler and feel a stab of pain about what we used to have. But mostly I feel grateful. Grateful for Emma. Grateful for the strength I didn't know I had. Grateful for the opportunity to build a new life that's actually better suited to who I am now than the old life ever was. The affair taught me that I can survive betrayal by the people I trust most. The divorce taught me that I'm capable of being alone without being lonely. Becoming a father taught me that love doesn't have to be complicated. Sometimes it's as simple as a 2-year-old who lights up when she sees you and wants you to read the same book 17 times in a row. I'm not the same person I was 3 years ago when I walked into Tyler's apartment and discovered my wife in his bed. That person was naive and trusting and believed that good intentions were enough to protect you from life's worst surprises. The person I am now is more cautious but also more resilient. I've learned that families can be rebuilt in unexpected configurations, that forgiveness is possible even when reconciliation isn't, and that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you creates space for the best thing to happen later. Emma will grow up knowing that families are complicated, that adults sometimes make mistakes, and that love comes in many different forms. She'll have 2 homes where she's cherished, multiple adults who are committed to her well-being, and a father who learned how to be strong because she needed him to be. And maybe that's actually a better foundation for life than the traditional family structure I'd originally planned to give her. So that's my story, Reddit. The worst thing I've ever experienced, catching my wife with my brother, led to the best thing that's ever happened to me, becoming Emma's dad. Life is weird, messy, and rarely goes according to plan. But sometimes the detours lead you exactly where you need to be, even if you never could have imagined getting there the way you did. Update. Emma said dada for the first time yesterday, and it was the single best moment of my entire life. Whatever else happened to get us here, I'll always be grateful for that.